Between 1992 and 2000, a vicious serial slayer plagued Russia. Known to have committed crimes in the cities of Angarsk, Irkutsk and Vladivostok, as well as the region of Siberia, the then-unidentified assailant would target exclusively women and girls, often carrying out violent sexual assaults before or after committing murder. He would soon become known as the Werewolf, the Angarsk Maniac, and the Wednesday Murderer, the latter of which was given to the killer because his victim's body was so often found on Wednesdays. For years, Russian police hunted for the true identity of the Angarsk Maniac, but it wasn't until they began DNA testing their own that they discovered the truth. The killer was a former policeman named Mikhail Popkov, a married father who'd left the force to take up employment as a private security guard. Despite the disbelief of his family, there was no doubt that Popkov was the werewolf. He'd later confessed to the murder of 83 victims, and today, Popkov is considered the single most prolific serial killer in Russian history. But who exactly is Popkov, and what led him to commit such atrocities? In this documentary, we aim to shed light on these questions and more, as we explore the twisted case of Mikhail Popkov, the Angarsk Maniac. Mikhail Viktorovich Popkov was born on March 7, 1964 in Norilsk, Russia. Not much is documented about Popkov's upbringing, but reportedly shortly after his birth, his family relocated to Angarsk and he spent some of his childhood being raised by his grandparents. When we finally reunited with his mother and father, he discovered he had a newborn sister. He subsequently began to resent the young girl as he felt that while she was adored, he was ignored. Popkov later claimed to have suffered abuse at the hands of his alcoholic mother, Antonia, though she would deny these allegations. Despite the challenges he endured at home, Popkov was noted to have been a clever student who excelled academically. His mother described him as a very neat boy who enjoyed cooking. Though Popkov was often curious and eager to learn, it took him some time to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. Initially, after completing his education, he spent time with the military. Shortly afterwards, he began working at a local plant where he would work his way up steadily through the ranks, graduating from a repairman to a compressor operator. Eventually, Popkov decided that law enforcement was the way to go. He reached this conclusion after a chance encounter with an old classmate who was part of the transport police. Though the money was roughly the same, the police schedule and responsibilities were what attracted Popkov to the job. In 1987, at the age of 23, he snagged a job at the police station. It was reportedly mostly a desk job that involved a lot of paperwork. Around the same time, he met and married a woman named Elena, who remained by his side for several years, even after his arrest. The couple had their first child, a daughter named Ekaterina, a few years after tying the knot. Elena also worked for the police for much of her adult life. In 2015, 3 years after Popkov was identified as the werewolf, Elena would speak out against his arrest and conviction. She classified that the allegations against him were fairy tales and that she met him before his sentencing to discuss the situation. He already knew it would be a life sentence, she stated. He denied everything. Even when our daughter Katya asked him, he said, "Katya, you understand that all these allegations are fairy tales. It is the system. I have worked within it. I know this system well." Elena claims that if there was something wrong with her husband, she would divorce him. By all accounts, Popkov was good at his job, and seen as a beloved family man. Speaking to investigators after his arrest, he claimed, "I had a family. My wife and daughter considered me a good husband and father," which corresponded to reality. As for his job, he added that he received positive feedback on his work. He noted, "I never thought of myself as mentally unhealthy. During my police service, I regularly passed medical commissions and was recognized as fit." Still, Popkov would admit to being a brutal killer. "I had a double life. In one life, I was an ordinary person. In my other life, I committed murders, which I carefully concealed from everyone, realizing that this was a criminal offense." Neighbors and those who knew the family personally would echo similar sentiments about their perfect image. Popkov spent all his free time with his wife and child, and they were never embroiled in arguments or scandals, as far as anyone knew. He was not abusive and never drank too much alcohol. Photographs of the couple together always showed them in a happy embrace. But like much of Popkov's life, all was not as it seemed. Popkov began his life of crime in 1992. When he was apprehended 20 years later, he revealed to the police that he was prompted to begin killing after he began suspecting that his wife was having an affair with a colleague. According to one Russian source, this all started one night when he returned home from work to find his 5-year-old daughter outside near the house. When asked what she was doing out, Ekaterina replied that her mother and an uncle she didn't know had asked her to go for a walk. Popkov soon found 2 used condoms inside a bin in their home. Despite this betrayal of their marriage, Popkov and Elena remained together. In a later interview, Elena would again describe her husband as being a strong and supportive shoulder for her. She quit her job following Popkov's discovery of the affair and became employed with his department, where he could keep an eye on her. It wasn't until January 2017 that confirmation of the relationship came when the co-worker admitted to having a brief affair with Elena back in the early 90s. They'd reportedly dated as teenagers. Investigators speculated that Popkov remained with his wife so that Ekaterina's life would remain intact. The affair, though, was not the only motive behind the murders. He also claimed that he wanted to cleanse the streets of prostitutes. However, the vast majority of Popkov's victims did not participate in sex work at all. To try and justify the murders, he stated, the victims were those who, unaccompanied by men at night, without a certain purpose, were on the streets, behaving carelessly, who were not afraid to enter into conversation with me, get into my car, and then go for a drive in search of adventures, for the sake of entertainment, ready to drink alcohol and have sexual intercourse with me. He referred to his victims as having negative behaviour, adding, "I had a desire to teach and punish." He essentially believed any woman with a husband, or a husband and children, should not be out drinking on her own and coming home late. He deemed these women immoral and felt they needed to be punished for their actions. Notably, many of Popkov's victims felt safe with him because he either wore his police uniform when offering lifts to them or showed them his ID badge. He also drove a police vehicle. Furthermore, it seems unlikely that many of his victims were ready to have sex with Popkov, given that we know he is a serial rapist who forced himself upon his targets and enjoyed their pain and suffering. Popkov claimed that his first murder had been carried out on a whim, stating, "I just felt I wanted to kill a woman I was giving a lift to in my car." Spanish newspaper La Vanguardia reports that his first victim had looked like his mother and was incredibly drunk, which is likely why she was targeted. Popkov's routine was simple. He would offer his victims a lift, and once they were in the car, he would beat them around the head until they lost consciousness. Afterwards, he would drive them to a secluded, often wooded area on the edge of the city, where he would mutilate them and brutally attack and murder them. By all accounts, Popkov needed this bloodshed as he found it sexually arousing. He raped all of his victims, some before death, others afterwards, sometimes both. Popkov used all sorts of weapons during his crimes, never really favouring one over another. He frequently stole from the police's store of confiscated arms to secure equipment and would throw away whatever weapon he'd used after the crime. making sure to clean it of his fingerprints first. He noted, "The choice of weapons for killing was always casual. I never prepared beforehand to commit a murder. I could use any object that was in the car. A knife, an axe, a bat. Knives, axes, bats, shovels, screwdrivers, and awls were his preferred types of weapon. He never used firearms, and despite reports that he'd used a noose to kill at least one victim, he claimed he didn't use ropes either." One of Popkov's most notable victims was a teacher at his daughter's music school. He recalled, "Her corpse was found in the forest, along with the body of another woman. My daughter asked me to give her money because the school was collecting to organize funerals. And Popkov obliged, giving his daughter money to put towards the teacher's funeral, wearing the veneer of a perfect, doting father and caring man. All the while, it was he who had brutally raped and killed the woman." In another instance, Popkov remembered the time he dropped his police identity token at the scene of a crime and had immediately returned to get it before it was discovered by investigators. He was shocked, however, when he arrived and found that one of the two women he'd killed that day was still breathing. He coldly claimed, "I finished her with a shovel." Investigators described Popkov's victims as being full-figured and not tall, with some news reports noting that these women often resembled his mother. Authorities suggested that he was seeking revenge on her through these murders. Of the first 29 victims he was found to have killed, 25 were between the ages of 19 and 28, while the other 4 were between the ages of 35 and 40. His victims had more often than not been out drinking and were partially intoxicated, and experts who weighed in on the case noted that some of the killings were further away because Popkov travelled frequently after leaving the police. In 2013, the Siberian Times spoke with the sister of one of Popkov's victims. 20-year-old Tanya Martinova was found dead alongside her friend Yulia Koprokova on October 29, 1998 in Angarsk. Tanya's sister, Victoria Shagieva, noted, "It happened 15 years ago, but the pain does not go away. It was me who presented Tanya a ticket to go to a concert, and she was killed after attending it." At the time of her death, Tanya was a married mother of one. Her husband, Igor, didn't like the idea of his wife staying out so late at the gig, but she attended anyway with a close friend, Yulia. The next morning, Igor called Victoria and told her that her sister hadn't come home. Victoria recalled, "I got truly scared. It was the first time she had never done this before. There were no mobile phones at the time. We could only call Yulia's parents, thinking Tanya must have stayed overnight there for some reason. But Yulia's parents said she had not come home either." The families of both young women immediately went to the police, but they were told they'd have to wait 3 days before a missing persons report could be filed. Later that night, their nude bodies were found by the side of a road. Victoria remembered how shocked she was upon finding out that her sister and her friend had been murdered. She noted, "Later, we were told that their bodies were found next to each other. Both girls were raped, cut, and chopped. The experts told us that at first they were killed and then raped. My elder brother, Oleg, went to the morgue to identify Tanya. She was so mutilated. He was almost green when he came out of there. He just could not say a word. I did not dare go in and look. Though Tanya's body had been mutilated, loved ones were able to say goodbye to her at her funeral, unlike Yulia's, whose face was so disfigured that she couldn't have an open casket funeral." Investigators soon discovered that the pair had gone for a quick drink with friends after the concert, and while on their way home, they were offered a lift by a policeman. Victoria told the Siberian Times that their mother could not cope with Tanya's death. She spent the rest of her life contacting mediums and looking for answers, eventually dying of a heart attack in 2007 at the age of 66. Victoria noted, "I think her heart could not cope with the pain any longer." Three women Popkov attempted to kill managed to survive their encounter with the ex-policeman. One of those women was Svetlana Misyavitchus, who was just 17 at the time of the assault. She has spoken from time to time about her experience with Popkov in the years since. Svetlana was on her way home from a friend's house in the city of Angarsk one bitterly cold night in January 1998 when a police vehicle pulled up to the side of the road and the driver, Popkov, offered her a lift. Lured in, as many were, by a false sense of security, the teenager agreed. She recalled, "I thought it safe to go with a policeman. I was so cold from head to toe, so I accepted." It didn't take long for her to realize that something was wrong, however. As Popkov drove past her house, Svetlana asked him, "Where are we going?" He subsequently drove the teenager to a secluded, wooded area, where he forced her to take off her clothes and smashed her head against a tree. She remembered Popkov repeatedly banging my head against a tree, adding that the ordeal seemed to go on for an eternity. Svetlana stated, "I was shaking. He wanted to rape me. He was mute. He didn't respond to anything. He said nothing. I crawled out from under him and ran to his car. I was hoping to find car keys there, but I failed. He caught me and I tripped down some steps." Despite being injured, Svetlana did her best to press on. She attempted to flag down help from some passers-by, but they refused to give her any aid. Moments later, the 17-year-old saw Popkov's police car approaching her. He exited the vehicle and attacked her again, leaving her for dead. Svetlana recalled, "The next thing I knew, I woke up in a morgue. I woke up, sat down, and spotted a label on the toe of a corpse next to me." She later woke up in hospital. Though her age was listed as 25, thankfully she was reunited with her mother shortly afterwards, who had been desperately looking for her since she didn't come home. Following her encounter with Popkov, Svetlana was left paralyzed down one side of her body, and around half of her hair had been torn out from her scalp. Speaking to The Sun in 2018, Svetlana, who is now 37, noted that her hair had turned grey by the time she was discharged from the hospital. "His attack aged me by 7 years. I couldn't walk or talk. I had to learn everything again from scratch. It took me 2 or 3 months. I had a stutter, and I still have it," she added. "My brain was damaged. If not for him, I would have had a normal life, had a family, and given birth to great kids." Another surviving victim of Popkov's, Evgeniya Protasova, has also spoken to the media about her traumatic ordeal. Evgeniya was 18 years old in July of 1999 when she and her boyfriend left a restaurant at around midnight following a date. Though he invited her back to his apartment, Evgeniya declined and asked him to walk her home. Her boyfriend, however, was angered by her rejection and refused to take her home, so Evgeniya began to walk alone. Like Svetlana and countless other victims, a police car soon pulled over next to her. Popkov was dressed in plain clothing, but showed the 18-year-old his ID badge and offered her a lift. Evgeniya agreed. Inside the vehicle, she suffered a blow to the head. She woke up in an isolated forest, with Popkov standing over her. He dragged her by the hair and viciously beat her. Evgeniya recalled, "I vividly remember that face. It looked like a beast, and I was completely scared." The 18-year-old knew that if she did not escape, Popkov would kill her. She managed to break free, and she fled from her attacker, but he caught up with her and continued his assault. She stated that after that, everything went black. She woke up in the hospital in Irkutsk. Evgeniya fared much better in life following her encounter with Popkov. She noted, "I have a good family now. I am married with 2 children. I have a son and a daughter." For years, authorities believed that the man they were chasing was a metal worker, railway employee, driver, or even a cemetery worker. They never investigated the possibility that the werewolf was one of their own. Not until 2012, when Popkov was arrested. This has led to much public criticism of the police force, especially since survivors reported that their experiences were mostly ignored by investigators. Shortly after leaving the hospital, Svetlana went to the police with the support of her mother and told them that she'd been approached and attacked by a police officer. The 17-year-old even managed to identify Popkov through a photograph, with an ex-police officer telling the Siberian Times she clearly confirmed it was him. However, the police did not believe her, as Popkov's wife, Elena, had concocted an alibi for her husband. On at least 2 occasions, Popkov's wife offered up an alibi when he was suspected or accused of being involved in an assault. The second instance was when Popkov contracted syphilis around the time a new victim was discovered who was also carrying the disease. Investigators' suspicions should have seen them carry out a DNA test, comparing Popkov's DNA to the evidence found at the crime scene. However, they declined to do so because Elena had claimed that her husband had been with her at the time of the murder. Critics of the original investigation into the Angarsk Maniac have noted that the case may have been solved sooner had the police been more willing to listen to survivors and to carry out proper testing with what little evidence they did have, rather than simply relying on the word of Elena Popkov. Though there wasn't much physical evidence, a DNA sample on the tyre tracks of a vehicle, a Lada 4x4, had been recovered from some of the crime scenes and were available for testing. Still, they were repeatedly pushed aside by investigators. For 2 decades, the identity of the werewolf, or the Angarsk Maniac, remained a mystery. In the 2000s, investigators attempted to identify the serial slayer by using the DNA sample they had once neglected. However, there was no match on the criminal database. In 2012, though, one investigator proposed a fresh way of doing things. He suggested they compare the suspect's DNA with that of active and retired police officers. The database, made up of about 3,500 names, found a match: Mikhail Popkov. Authorities were also able to determine that Popkov had owned a Lada 4x4 at the time of the murders, the same vehicle whose tyre tracks were found at several crime scenes. By this time, Popkov was 53 years old. He'd left the police force, fired according to La Vanguardia, retired according to the London Evening Standard in 1998, just before he supposedly ceased killing altogether in 2000. He claimed he did so because after contracting syphilis from a victim, he lost his bloodlust and he struggled with impotence. He stated, "I just neglected the illness, tried to cure it by myself, was afraid to go to the hospital, and I felt the consequences. I became an impotent. After that, I lost the desire to rape and murder." Following his departure from the police, he began working in private security. Popkov was arrested on June 23, 2012, while in Vladivostok. Initially, he was accused of murdering 29 people, though he would confess to just 24 of these crimes. While testifying to police and later in court, he would once again parrot his beliefs that he was attempting to purge his city of immoral women, claiming they all needed to be punished for their bad behaviours. He added that he only took the lives of women with dissipated lives. There were lots of reactions following Popkov's arrest. Victoria Shagieva, sister of Tanya Martinova, one of Popkov's many victims, recalled seeing him for the first time and how shocked she was to find out that she vaguely recognized him, as they'd both been involved in the biathlon, a winter sport combining cross-country skiing and rifle shooting. She observed, "I remember him as a tall, slim man. He was always alone, with a slippery, shifty glance. This beast took the life of my sister, who had so many happy years in front of her." Meanwhile, when survivor Svetlana Misyavitchus walked into the courtroom and came face to face with Popkov again, she stated, "I lost the ability to walk again the second I saw him." Former co-workers, though, couldn't believe he was responsible for such heinous crimes. One ex-colleague recalled, "He was an absolutely normal man. He liked biathlon. Once on duty, he shot a rapist during an arrest. There was an investigation and he was not punished. The chiefs considered he had taken fair action." Another ex-co-worker added, "I used to work closely with him for 5 years. He knew lots of jokes and stories and could be the soul of the party." At the time of his arrest, his daughter, Ekaterina, was 26 and working as a school teacher. Neither she nor her mother could comprehend what they were being told about Popkov. They both maintained that he was innocent, though they knew with the weight of such allegations they could no longer stay in Angarsk. Elena sold the family home, and both she and Ekaterina changed their surname before they moved to another city. Elena stated, "I support him. I believe him. If he were to be released right now, I would not say a word, and we would continue to live together. I love him. I support him. He did not cause me any harm for all these years. I felt safe with him." A senior prosecutor noted that the pair did not divorce following Popkov's conviction, stating, "His wife wrote appeals and asked to see him in jail until the last moment, and they often saw each other. The wife has not rejected her husband, even after his shocking confession to investigators. They are still married." Ekaterina, meanwhile, believed that someone else was responsible for the crimes of her father had been charged with. On a TV interview, she stated, "I do not believe any of this. I always felt myself as a daddy's girl. For 25 years we were together, hand in hand. We walked together, rode bikes, went to the shops, and he met me from school. We both collect model cars, so we have the same hobby." She also added that she wanted to be a criminologist and reads lots of books about serial killers. She claimed, "I read a book with tips of how investigators catch serial killers, and there were also basic classifications about murderers. Daddy doesn't fit any of these classifications. He doesn't look like some maniac." Popkov's mother also defended her son, claiming he was not capable of such crimes. Antonia stated, "He loves his family, cherishes his daughter, and he dreamt about grandchildren. He would not have done this. He will remain my son until my death." Popkov was first convicted in January 2015 after confessing to 22 murders. He would later state that he'd never expected to be caught. He did not think DNA advancements would become as reliable and heavily used as they are today, noting, "I could not anticipate the examination of DNA. I was born in another century. Now there are such modern technologies, methods, but not earlier. If we have not got to that level of genetic examination, then I would not be sitting in front of you." State investigators were noted to have been shocked that anyone had survived his brutal assaults. One prosecutor observed, "He clearly loved killing. Some victims had 145 or even 170 knife wounds. He said that he felt satisfied when he felt their pain as they were stabbed." The prosecution also described how Popkov was not only in a good frame of mind and able to distinguish right from wrong, but that he had a pathological attraction to murder and a pathological need to kill people, which included sadistic aspects. A criminologist named Yuri Antonian, who studied Popkov as part of the police investigation, added that the former policeman enjoyed his actions. He saw them as his reason for living. Surprisingly, Popkov showed some remorse at his trial. However, this conflicted with the statements he gave regarding his disgust for the women and girls he murdered. He tried to justify the murders by stating that it was the fault of the victims because they were walking around drunk instead of at home with their husbands and children. Following this initial conviction, the authorities continued to investigate. Before long, it was confirmed that Popkov was responsible for a further 59 deaths. In December 2018, he was convicted of those crimes. Currently, Popkov has been convicted on 78 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted aggravated murder. He has confessed to 83 slayings, however, and is suspected of more. When asked how many women and girls he has killed, Popkov stated, "I can't say exactly. I didn't keep a record." Notably, Popkov did not stop killing after 2000, as he claimed. Many of his murders occurred after this time. Popkov was given 2 life sentences in a high-security prison following his convictions. Last year, in 2023, he was given a further 10 years after it was discovered that he'd killed 3 more women. In October 1997 and March 1998, he strangled 2 women, both 25. He burned the body of one of these victims by pouring petrol on it and setting it alight. Then, in October 2003, he stabbed a 31-year-old to death. Her body bore 40 stab wounds when she was found. Furthermore, in 2023, Popkov also stated that he wished to join the military to help with Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Russian authorities have been tapping convicts to fight on the front lines since 2022 and have been offering to waive the sentences of inmates if they are able to last 6 months. When asked by a media outlet what his dream was, Popkov replied, to join the army. He added that he realized that the war was not a computer game, but stated that he would not hesitate to fight side by side with Russian forces. He also claimed that his prior military training would be helpful, even if it was around 4 decades out of date. His daughter, Ekaterina, has since married and given birth to her first child, a son. During the lead-up to his birth, Ekaterina publicly expressed her concerns that her offspring would inherit her father's maniacal inclination. Even then though, in 2017, she admitted that she still doubted her father's numerous convictions, claiming she never saw any blood on him, nor any wounds. She stated, "Watch how a butcher works. He is covered from head to toe. Did the women lay down meekly by themselves? I bet they would leave marks, bites or scratches. You cannot hide this. But my father did not have any suspicious marks on his body or face." She stated that she underwent psychiatric help following her father's conviction and is keen for him to seek professional help too. Despite all of his crimes, she referred to him as the best father. It is difficult to speculate on the exact motives of Popkov and what led him to this life, in part because we know so little about his upbringing. Psychiatrist Alexander Grishin proposed that growing up with an allegedly abusive, alcoholic mother was a major contributing factor, with news outlets suggesting that the difficult relationship he had with his mother led Popkov to commit violence against women and girls, especially, but not limited to, those who resembled his mother. Grishin also noted that Popkov falls into the category of what he refers to as organized maniacs. Organized maniacs are people with high mental abilities, socially adapted, often with families. They find convenient jobs which secures them and gives time for crimes. It is a hard job to catch such a maniac. It is hard to spot such a person. Even police enrollment tests are not good enough for it. The fact that only drunk women attracted him could be the result of his childhood problems and associations. His mother used to drink alcohol and often abused him. Grishin added, maybe in his childhood, other drunk women abused him too, and all this affected his behavior later in his adult life and led to such horrible consequences. Despite being one of the most horrific single-handed perpetrators of femicide Europe has ever seen, investigators believe it could get worse in the coming years, with one police investigator suspecting that Popkov committed more than 100 crimes, if not more, close to 200. Many believe Popkov is only revealing murders when it's convenient for him, and that he is currently sitting on further confessions, waiting for a more beneficial time to share them.